What are we discussing on today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast? Regrading the offseason and setting up goals and expectations for Geraldo Perdomo in 2025.
You are Locked on Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm Millard Thomas, host of this wonderful podcast. I'm a multimedia journalist and I'm a graphic designer, so please go check out my website, MillardThomas24.myportfolio.com. On there you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. On today's show, we'll be regrading the Dbacks offseason. We'll be going back and evaluating the moves that Mike Hazen made with hindsight, of course. And then in segment number 3, we'll wrap up the podcast by doing something we've been doing every day this offseason, a little player review, strengths and weaknesses, and setting up goals for Geraldo Perdomo in 2025. And so we got a whole bunch I want to talk to you guys about today. But first, thank you for making Locked on Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free. It's available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. And one of those platforms is YouTube. Please hit subscribe to Locked on Diamondbacks on YouTube. All right, let's get back into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast. Now let's regrade the D-backs offseason to see how Mike Hazen did. I was trying to find if I did a podcast where I graded each move individually. I could not find that podcast. I was sure I did one of those. I could not find one. I know for certain I gave the offseason as a whole an A because Mike Hazen literally did everything on our offseason wish list. He got ourselves a third baseman. He filled out the rotation with Monty and Erod. He upgraded the DH, got more power bats with Jock and Grichuk. Didn't address the bullpen, but everywhere else on the roster, Mike Hazen crushed it. And we definitely gave him an A after the offseason he had. But going back and looking at how the moves performed for the D-backs in 2024, a year that was very up and down, a year where the D-backs were one of the worst teams in baseball the first half, arguably the best team in baseball the second half, finished with a record better than last year, finished with the most runs in Major League Baseball. And despite all that, still missed out on the postseason. And so how did their off-season moves affect their standings in 2024? Let's start it off by talking about Eugenio Suarez, who made a monster impact on the D-backs this season, because I don't know if there was a player on this D-backs team who made more of an impact than Eugenio outside of Ketan Marte. I guess I gave the most valuable player on this D-backs team to Christian Walker for the non-Marte players. I did do that podcast a couple of weeks ago. Who's the most valuable non-Marte? I said Christian Walker, but Eugenio was my honorable mention here because in the first half of the season, Eugenio was horrendous, one of the 5 worst players in the sport, according to WRC Plus, according to some other offensive metrics. And guess what? While he was one of the worst offensive players in the sport, the D-backs as a team was not very good. And then June 27th, entering July, Eugenio, his season started to take off. He turned into Babe Ruth. And guess what? The D-back season at the same time started to take off as well. So as Eugenio was struggling, so was this D-backs team. And then as soon as he started to pick it up, so did Suarez. And so at the time when the D-backs made this move, I thought it was a great trade. He wasn't super expensive. You gave up Sebi Zavala and Carlos Vargas, 2 guys that were not long-term pieces in the D-backs plans at all. So you just dumped off a couple of prospects I didn't believe in at all. You took back a third baseman with 30 home run, 100 RBI potential, but was definitely a little bit in the decline. Struck out a ton. Maybe the power wasn't going to be as prominent this season. Maybe the overall offensive package, like there's a chance it was going to fall off a cliff. And so, despite me liking the move in a vacuum, there was definitely some risk there with Eugenio Suarez. But I definitely think we all felt like it was at least a B plus move at the time, right? At least at the minimum, a B move. Going from Evan Longoria to Eugenio Suarez. Yes, he was a few years removed from a 49 home run season, but I remember at the time I was saying if he can at least hit 25 plus home runs, drive in 80 plus ribbies, and have 180 strikeouts, like that's all I'm looking for. 25 home runs, 80 RBIs, and I don't even care how many strikeouts he has. That's all we need. And Eugenio did more than that. 30 home runs, 100 RBI campaign, solid defense, and honestly didn't strike out as much as I thought he was going to. And so for Eugenio, yes, the first half was so bad, but in the second half, he carried this team offensively during so many stretches. I'm giving this move an A minus, considering I don't think Mike Hazen gave up a lot for Eugenio at all. And he's going to be coming back more than likely next year once the D-backs pick up his club option for $15 million. How about this move? Eduardo Rodriguez, Erod, 4 years, $80 million deal that the D-backs signed him to. And at the time, I felt great about Erod. I remember it was like the 11:59th hour of the winter meetings. I thought it was going to be another year where everyone anticipated the offseason to start with the winter meetings. And once again, nothing happened. But at the 11th hour, the D-backs decided to go out there and give the bag to Eduardo Rodriguez, coming from the Detroit Tigers. And I definitely was in favor of this move. Also, at the time, a lefty starter to mix it in with Zach Allen, Kelly, and Fott. Very righty heavy rotation. Erod is someone that I thought did have all-star potential. I thought his last season with the Tigers, he should have been their all-star representative. The only issue with Erod was always his questionable health history, right? But I thought 4 years, 80 million. Yeah, maybe 20 million is a little expensive and steep, but considering he's a quality pitcher who does have a pretty high ceiling, maybe not the ceiling of a number one starter, but can be one of the best number three starters in the sport. Maybe price tag is a little expensive for number three, but I thought considering how this D-backs team was set up with the lineup that was already in place, the rest of the rotation already in place, you really needed Erod services. So I think it was okay to overpay for a player when you already had the ready-made roster. He was one of those finishing pieces, so I think it was okay to overpay for him at the time. And we thought he was going to make a major impact with the D-backs. And then we learned with the questionable history that Erod has, it didn't take him long at all to get hurt with the Arizona Diamondbacks. And then once he went down for a couple months, that really hurt his standing with this organization as it took him a while to recover from injury. And then once he came back, he did not look good at all. And now we still have 3 years left remaining on that deal. And so at the time, I would have given the contract at least a B plus for bringing in a starter who I thought was pretty good. Lefty gets to be right in as that number three guy in this D-backs rotation. I love the move in the offseason. But now, as the season has ended, at the very best, you could grade this move a C minus, a D plus. We expect Erod to be better next year because it can't be that bad again. But after the season he had year one with the D-backs, we right now have to give the move no higher than a C minus. Then the final move we'll talk about before we get to segment number two, D-backs brought back Lourdes Gurriel, 3-year, $42 million deal. Again, this move is a B plus. You just brought back one of your own free agents, Gurriel, solid defensive player, got some pop as well. A little bit of a disappointing season at times, very up and down. Heated up more in the second half as opposed to the first half, but considering you still got this guy in the Dalton Varsho deal along with Gabriel Moreno, the production he gives you is absolutely perfect. Around a 770 OPS, around a 275 average, 20 to 25 home runs, good defense in the outfield. And this guy's going to be around the next couple years. And I think a $42 million price tag on a 3-year deal, absolutely a bargain for what Lourdes Gurriel provides. And so I gave that move. Definitely, I felt like that was an A move in the offseason. I still feel like that's at least a B plus move moving forward. And now we'll grade the rest of the D-backs offseason in segment number 2. But hey, if you want to place any wagers on an upcoming NFL game, then the place you're going to want to go is FanDuel because, hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play by play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's fanduel.com. Right now on FanDuel, you can do this little thing, which is my favorite thing to do, called the same game parlay. Right now, I like to take the Saints money line, Derek Carr over on total touchdowns. I know he's hurt, so we're going to replace that with Spencer Rattler this Sunday over on total touchdowns with Alvin Kamara over on receptions. When that three leg hits, it brings a big smile to my face. If you want a big smile on your face, just visit fanduel.com. $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So go check out America's #1 sports book, FanDuel. All right. Let's get back to the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast and let's continue grading this D-backs offseason. Next up, let's talk about Kevin Newman because definitely in the offseason, this was an under the radar move to me. This was someone that I thought was just going to be a spring training body. Like I probably gave this like a D plus or a C minus, or I might not even graded it in the offseason. I might not even really talked about this move that much in the offseason because I probably didn't even believe Kevin Newman was going to be on this D-backs roster come opening day, let alone really make an impact with the squad this season. And you look at the Kevin Newman numbers, you see a 686 OPS, kind of right along with what he's done in his career. You probably think like he had a disappointing season, but no. I thought Kevin Newman was really solid for the D-backs this season. 278 average, actually his highest since 2019. And like the numbers aren't going to jump off the page, but a 278 average, he played 111 games. Though he played solid defense. And just at times, I thought Kevin Newman did come through in situations that called for a big hit or there was runners on. Like when Kevin Newman was at the plate in those kind of situations, like there was a level of belief and faith I did have in Kevin Newman. I did not think he would just out there as a, dead rotting body, just like a warm body trying to move us along game to game. Like I didn't think he was like a innings eater position player. Like we have those kind of pitchers, right? Where you see you got your bad teams, the D-backs have done in the past, where your number 5 starter might just be some 36-year-old veteran that you need to just eat innings for the rest of the season. There are also position players like that. I thought Kevin Newman might have been one of those guys coming to the year. Did not really expect much of anything from him this season, and I thought he was better than expected. And so I probably gave it a non-grade in the offseason. I'll give it a B minus, a C plus. I'll give it a B minus. Like the numbers again aren't spectacular, but I never thought he hurt the D-backs at all when he was in those games. I thought he kept them afloat when the Perdomos were out, when the Martes were out. I thought he always did his job. So pro Kevin Newman, especially when we thought Blaze Alexander was going to be the guy. We saw Kevin Newman start getting playing time. And we're like, why is Kevin Newman getting playing time over Blaze Alexander? Blaze is the future. It was the right move by Toy Lavello to do that because Newman was better and had been better all season. So ended up being pro Kevin Newman. I did not start out that way. How about the next person? Jock Peterson. And for him, I think clearly we were in love with him in the offseason. Jocktober. We wanted to see it so bad. We were so close to seeing Jocktober. He has made so many stops in the NL West before this. And so someone that was already familiar with the other team, someone that we knew had that moxie and that swagger, and we saw it throughout the regular season as he was pimping home runs, pounding his chest, calling himself him. We all loved the Jock Peterson signing before we saw him play, and it only reaffirmed our confirmation bias once we saw him play because Jock from day one was absolutely electric for the D-backs this season. Really, I was kind of surprised he was able to keep up his offensive numbers all year. Definitely slowed down as the season went along, no doubt about it. But if you actually look at his second half numbers, like his OPS went up in the second half, his average went up in the second half. And it sounds crazy to say, it was only because he had a bad month of September, like a lot of these D-backs players, like a Jake McCarthy as well. But the second half of the season overall, Jock Peterson really carried this D-backs team, and he had himself a fantastic season with Arizona. And I pray he comes back next season. Doesn't seem like it's going to be likely as he has like a $14 million mutual option. Both sides will have to pick it up. If I'm Jock Peterson, why would that pick it? Why would I pick it up? I just put up all-star level numbers in like 130 games. I'm a DH, so I'm only going to be batting right going forward. And so if a team just saw me put up the offensive numbers I did on the price tag I just got from the D-backs, why can't I get more of a bag? If I'm Jock Peterson, I think that's the calculation he's doing right now. He just did what he did for the D-backs on 9.5 million, so he might be expecting a bigger pay raise than the 14 million he's expected. If you want to pick up that option, he might be able to go out there and maybe get himself 16, 17, 18, maybe even up to $20 million if someone values that bat that much. You're not going to be getting the defense or anything from Jock Peterson, but maybe someone wants to actually make him a full-time DH, give him that Marcell Ozuna treatment. Maybe you would expect bigger numbers from Jock Peterson, despite him being a full-time platoon with the Arizona Diamondbacks. And so Jock Peterson, in the offseason, the move was an A, and after the season, the move still an A. Randall Grichuk, this is someone that where I like the move in the offseason because I thought it was just a cherry on top. I didn't even think we needed Randall Grichuk. I think I gave it like a B minus. Randall Grichuk wasn't someone that I was like in love with as a player, as a major leaguer prior to him coming with the D-backs. I thought like he was a good above average major leaguer, but I didn't think he was anything special. And after the season he just had, like, I think we have to bring back Randall Grichuk. He loved hitting in this ballpark. Like, if we're being honest, it was a borderline career season for Grichuk. I mean, didn't play enough games where you could really say that probably because this is a guy who's been around 25 home runs. This is a guy who's had a 30 home run season in his career before when he was playing every single day. And I think he still can be an everyday player. That's why for him, who has the mutual option, I don't think he's come back to the D-backs either next year because he had a 291 average, the highest for his career for a single season. He had an 875 OPS, the second highest in his career for a single season. And I think he probably thinks he can get more playing time and a better role somewhere else. And I don't blame him. 106 games where you're putting up like your best slash line ever and you can't get more playing time is probably very frustrating if you're a Randall Grichuk. And so I want to bring him back. I gave like the offseason move probably a B minus, but after the regular season he had, it's definitely an A. He crushed with runners in scoring position, super clutch, great off the bench, great locker room guy. I love Randall Grichuk, and I wish he would come back to the D-backs next season. Then the final offseason move that we got discussed, the move that happened right before the regular season, D-backs signing Jordan Montgomery. I gave this move definitely an A plus 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 at the time. I was like, oh my God, the D-backs just built an all-star rotation. I was great with Gallen, Kelly, Fott, and Erod. I thought that was one of the best 1 through 4s in baseball, and then we'll figure out that number 5 starter. But once we added Monty, I legitimately thought we had the deepest rotation in the sport. Monty, I was like, he pitches like a number 2 starter. I was like, he's a number 2 starter, and we just signed him to maybe be our 3 or 4. This guy just beat us in the World Series as the number 1 starter, and now he might be our middle of the rotation guy. I thought it was an embarrassment of riches for the D-backs at the time of us signing him. And now looking back at it, we've realized all we did was sign Madison Bumgarner. So that was an F move by the Arizona Diamondbacks. And now we'll talk about Geraldo Perdomo and what he needs to improve on in 2025. But hey, if you're looking to plan a trip, then I suggest going to booking.com, booking.yeah, because explore those US cities you always secretly want to learn more about with hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more. On booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay, even in your baseball rival city during postseason. Booking.com delivers exactly the right stay for you. From hotels that look over stadiums to family friendly resorts to cute beds and breakfast stays, Booking.com has so many choices across the US. The right stay can make you a fan of any US city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, Booking.yeah. And also, if you love playing daily fantasy sports, then I suggest Prize Picks because Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less and at least two player stats for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your games all season long on Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as four correct picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get in on the action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. All right. Let's get back to the Locked On Dimebacks podcast and let's do the Geraldo Perdomo, the Jerry review. We're going to be talking about his strengths, his weaknesses, and his goals for 2025. This is a little series we're doing all off season long as we break down the players and how they did and performed for the D-backs in 2024. And for Perdomo, his strengths from this past season: plate discipline, base running, vibes, defense, and late game situations. I always say Geraldo Perdomo is the standard when it comes to play discipline for this D-backs team. However, Perdomo is perceiving pitches, the strike zone, balls and strikes, I think is a trickle down effect for the rest of the lineup. I think he has the play discipline, and usually after his at bats is how I see other dudes on this D-backs team approach the pitcher because I don't think anyone on this D-back squad has better plate discipline than Jerry. This is a guy who does not strike out at all. I mean, he does strike out a little bit, but not at a high rate at all. It's one of his best attributes, only a 15% K rate this past season. The walk rate actually went down from the previous season, but still 9% isn't bad at all, especially when you look at that 15% K rate. So the walk rate goes down, but so did the strikeout rate. So you're not mad at all about that when looking at the Geraldo Perdomo slash line. You look at base running, he's also great in that area. He was in the 89th percentile when it came to base running. He's not like a speedster. He's not Corbin Carroll or Jake McCarthy, but he does have above average speed. We saw him with double digit steals last year. Would like to see him get a little bit more aggressive on the base pass because I think that's where he could really show some value with the D backs. Not just his play discipline, but also use his wheels a little bit. A further point on the plate discipline for Geraldo Perdomo, his chase percentage in 2024, he was in the 96th percentile. Whiff percentage, 99th, and K percentage, 90th. That tells you he is tier one player when it comes to not striking out and not chasing pitches. This guy is one of the best, 90th percentile or better in K rate, whiff percentage, and chase rate. This is basically like the Juan Soto of shortstops when it comes to plate discipline. So that's a great strength. The base running's a strength. The vibes are a strength as well, right? The post game interviews, the in game mic'd up sessions, like anytime there's a camera or a microphone around Geraldo Perdomo, you know he's going to give you some good content. So love him for the locker room as well. Defense was really good for Perdomo. You look at the FanGraphs defensive metrics, you filter it for shortstops. He's near the top of a lot of lists for NL shortstops. A really strong season for him there. The glove is always getting better too, which is another thing. He seems to be improving in that area as his career is going along. And I thought that glove was so important once he came back because we knew Blaze Alexander, his bat was really special those first couple weeks of the season, but his glove really hurt his profile as a player. And as he struggled with the glove, it affected his playing time. And then his defensive struggles affected his offensive performance. And then it all unraveled for Blaze Alexander. So I think the defense of Geraldo Perdomo, the quality of it was really important. And then also late game situations. Perdomo is someone who bats better in innings 7 through 9 as opposed to innings 1 through 6. This is a guy that gets better as the game goes on. Innings 7 through 9, Perdomo, 327 average and 886 OPS. So this guy loves late game situations. But what can he work on for next year? His weaknesses: power, breaking pitches, and clutchness. Geraldo Perdomo does not have a lot of power at all. And that's okay. Only a 374 slugging this past season. Career 330 slugging. He has no home runs against right-handed pitchers, I believe. I could double check that for you guys. Against left-handed pitchers. So as a right-handed batter, Geraldo Perdomo has no home runs in his career, and so the power is something that we would like to see a little bit more from Perdomo. I'm not saying he has to turn into a home run monster, but at least gap power, right? Double power, that would be a little bit nicer. You look at the hard contact stats, exit velo, hard hit percentage, really below league average stuff. So would like to see that get picked up for Perdomo. Breaking pitches, it was the one area he could not hit because fastballs, 310 average for Perdomo. Off speed pitches, 326 average. But the breaking pitch, 170 average this past season, needs to work on that. The only kind of pitch he cannot hit very well right now, but he's still super young and still has time to work on that. And then I said he was good in late game situations, but overall clutchness is something he can work on. Runners in scoring position, 735 OPS this past year after it was like 9 something in 2023. And a high leverage of moments, a 196 average and a 562 OPS. Would like to see Perdomo be a little bit better in the clutch next season. But for me, the goal that I have for him next season that I really want him to get to Jake McCarthy level power. That's not a lot at all. That's basically league average. Jake McCarthy this past season was a 400 slug. I think league average was 399. Perdomo this past season was 374, his career 330. Just get to a league average slug. That will add a little bit more pop to the doubles, the triples, the home runs, a few more extra base hits, adds to a few more RBIs on your resume, a few more runs scored on your resume, and leads to more production overall for this D-backs team. So that's the one goal that I have for Jerry in 2025. Now, that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. We'll be revisiting the trade deadline and be doing a little player review on Eugenio Suarez. So come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Dow says.